Eighth grade, happy Tuesday. Today is the day that we are finishing night. I cannot believe it, but we're going to read from page 107 to page 116 and finish this book. Some announcements for you. I want you to know that by Thursday of this week, I'm going to be expecting 100% of us to start doing our work on the Google Classroom. The reason is that next week on Monday, we're going to be starting a writing unit together because we will be finished our book. And to do this writing unit, I will need all of you to be online. So please send me a Jupyter message if there's anything that you need me to do to help you be able to do that. But as of Thursday and Friday this week, I'd like 100% of our work to be completed on the computers. For now, please meet me on page 107. We are going to meet where it says he was lying on the boards, okay? So at this point in time, Ellie and his dad are at the last concentration camp that they're going to be at. And Ellie's dad is starting to really struggle health-wise. He was chosen in a selection to be killed, and Ellie messed up the selection, ran around in the groups, distracted everyone. And when Ellie did that, the guards were looking at him, and so they didn't watch a bunch of the older men switch over to the people who were going to stay alive side. And so he rescued his dad. He's now in a situation where he's hearing about other men who are abandoning their fathers because they don't think that they have the strength that it takes to keep taking care of them. And Ellie is starting to be a little bit tempted to give up on caring for his father. He was lying on the boards, ashen, his lips pale and dry, shivering. I couldn't stay with him any longer. We had been ordered to go outside to allow for cleaning of the blocks. Only the sick could remain inside. We stayed outside for 5 hours. We were given soup. When they allowed us to return to the blocks, I rushed towards my father. Did you eat? No. Why? They didn't give us anything. They said that we were sick, that we would die soon, that it would be a waste of food. I can't go on. I gave him what was left of my soup, but my heart was heavy. I was aware that I was doing it grudgingly. Just like Rabbi Elihu's son, I had not passed the test. Every day my father was getting weaker. His eyes were watery and his face was the color of dead leaves. On the third day after we arrived in Buchenwald, everybody had to go to the showers, even the sick, who were instructed to go last. When we returned from the showers, we had to wait outside a long time. The cleaning of the blocks had not been completed. From afar, I saw my father and I ran to meet him. He went by me like a shadow, passing me without stopping, without even a glance. I called to him. He did not turn around. I ran after him. Father, where are you running? He looked at me for a moment, and his gaze was distant, otherworldly, the face of a stranger. It only lasted a moment, and then he ran away. Suffering from dysentery, my father was prostrate on his cot, with another 5 sick inmates nearby. I sat next to him, watching him. I no longer dared to believe that he could still elude death. I did all I could to give him hope. All of a sudden, he sat up and he placed his feverish lips against my ear. Elazar, I must tell you where I buried the gold and silver. In the cellar. You know, and he began talking faster and faster, afraid of running out of time before he could tell me everything. I tried to tell him that it was not over yet, that we would be going home together, but he no longer wanted to listen to me. He could no longer listen to me. He was worn out. Saliva mixed with blood was trickling from his lips. He had closed his eyes. He was gasping more than he was breathing. For a ration of bread, I was able to exchange cots to be next to my father. When the doctor arrived in the afternoon, I went to tell him that my father was very ill. Bring him here. I explained that he could not stand up, but the doctor would not listen. And so, with great difficulty, I brought my father to him. He stared at him and then asked curtly, "What do you want?" "My father is sick," I answered in his place. "Dysentery." "That's not my business. I'm a surgeon. Go on, make room for the others." My protests were in vain. "I can't go on, my son. Take me back to my bunk." I took him back and I helped him to lie down. He was shivering. "Try to get some sleep, father. Try to fall asleep." His breathing was labored. His eyes were closed, but I was convinced that he was seeing everything, that he was seeing the truth in all things. Another doctor came to the block. My father refused to get up. He knew that it would be of no use. In fact, that doctor had come only to finish off the patients. I listened to him shouting at them that they were lazy good-for-nothings who only wanted to stay in bed. I considered jumping him and strangling him, but I had neither the strength nor the courage. I was riveted to my father's agony. My hands were aching, I was clenching them so hard. To strangle the doctor and the others, to set the whole world on fire, my father's murderers. But even the cry stuck in my throat. So his dad isn't like actively being killed right now, but his dad is really sick, he needs medical help, and none of the doctors are helping any of the people who are sick right now. They're just saying that it's better for them to die. Ellie is then holding them accountable that they're murderers. They're killing his father by choosing to not help save him. On my return from the bread distribution, I found my father crying like a child. "My son, they're beating me." "Who?" I thought he was delirious. When you're delirious, it means that you're seeing things and making things up. Because he has a high fever, he might be seeing things, right? "Him, the Frenchman, and the Pole. They beat me." One more stab to the heart. One more reason to hate. One less reason to live. "Eleazar, Eleazar, tell them to not beat me. I haven't done anything. Why are they beating me?" I began to insult his neighbors. They mocked me. I promised them bread, soup. They laughed. Then they got angry. They could not stand my father any longer, they said, because he no longer was able to drag himself outside to relieve himself. The following day, he complained that they had taken his ration of bread. "While you were asleep?" "No, I wasn't asleep. They threw themselves on me. They snatched it from me, my bread, and then they beat me. Again. I can't go on, my son. Give me some water." I knew that he must not drink, but he pleaded with me so long that I gave in. Water was the worst poison for him, but what else could I do for him? With or without water, it would be over soon. "You at least have pity on me." Have pity on him? I, his only son. A week went by like that. "Is this your father?" asked the blocoletess. "Yes. He is very sick. The doctor won't do anything for him." He looked me straight in the eye. "The doctor cannot do anything more for him, and neither can you." He placed his big, hairy hand on my shoulder and added, "Listen to me, kid. Don't forget that you're in a concentration camp. In this place, it is every man for himself, and you cannot think of others, not even your father. In this place, there is no such thing as a father, brother, or friend. Each of us lives and dies alone. Let me give you good advice. Stop giving your ration of bread and soup to your old father. You cannot help him anymore. And you're hurting yourself. In fact, you should be getting his rations." I listened to him without interrupting. He was right, I thought deep down, not daring to admit it to myself. Too late to save your old father. You could have 2 rations of bread, 2 rations of soup. It was only a fraction of a second, but it left me feeling guilty. I ran to get some soup and I brought it to my father. He did not want it. All he wanted was water. "Don't drink water, eat the soup." "I'm burning up. Why are you so mean to me, my son? Water." I brought him the water. Then I left the block for roll call, but I quickly turned back. I lay down on the upper bunk. The sick were allowed to stay in the block, so I would be sick. I didn't want to leave my father. All around me there was silence now, broken only by moaning. In front of the block, the SS were giving orders. An officer paused between the bunks. My father was pleading. "My son, water! I'm burning up, my insides!" "Silence over there!" barked the officer. "Eleazar," continued my father, "water!" The officer came closer and shouted at him to be silent, but my father did not hear. He continued to call me. The officer wielded his club and dealt him a violent blow to the head. I didn't move. I was afraid. My body was afraid of another blow, this time to my head. My father groaned once more, I heard. "Eleazar." I could see that he was still breathing in gasps. I didn't move. When I came down from my bunk after roll call, I could see his lips trembling. He was murmuring something. I remained more than an hour, leaning over him, looking at him, etching his bloody, broken face into my mind. Then I had to go to sleep. I climbed into my bunk above my father, who was still alive. The date was January 28th, 1945. I woke up at dawn on January 29th. On my father's cot there lay another sick person. They must have taken him away before daybreak and taken him to the crematorium. Perhaps he was still breathing. No prayers were said over his tomb. No candle was lit in his memory. His last word had been my name. He called out to me, and I had not answered. I did not weep, and it pained me that I could not weep, but I was out of tears. And deep inside me, if I could have stretched the recesses of my feeble conscience, I might have found something. I might have found something like free at last. I remained in Buchenwald until April 11th. I shall not describe my life during that period. It no longer mattered. Since my father's death, nothing mattered to me anymore. I was transferred to the children's block, where there were 600 of us. The front was coming closer. I spent my days in total idleness, with one desire, to eat. I no longer thought of my father or my mother. From time to time I would dream, but only about soup, an extra ration of soup. On April 5th, the wheel of history turned. It was late afternoon. We were standing inside the block waiting for an SS to come and count us. He was late. Such lateness was unprecedented in the history of Buchenwald. Something must have happened. 2 hours later, the loudspeakers transmitted an order from the commandant. All Jews were to gather in the Appelplatz. This was the end. Hitler was about to keep his promise. The children of our block did as ordered. There was no choice. Gustav, the blockleitess, made that clear with his club. But on our way out, we met some prisoners who whispered to us, "Go back to your block. The Germans plan to shoot you. Go back and don't move." We returned to the block. On our way there, we learned that the underground resistance of the camp had made the decision not to abandon the Jews and to prevent their liquidation. As it was getting late and the confusion was great, countless Jews had been passing as non-Jews. The Lagerlites had decided that a general roll call would take place the next day. Everybody would have to be present. The roll call took place. The Lager commandant announced that Buchenwald camp would be liquidated. 10 blocks of inmates would be evacuated every day. From that moment on, there was no further distribution of bread or soup, and the evacuation began. Every day, a few thousand inmates passed the camp's gate and did not return. On April 10th, there were still some 20,000 prisoners in the camp, among them a few hundred children. It was decided to evacuate all of us at once, by evening. Afterwards, they would blow up the camp. And so we were herded onto the huge Appelplatz in ranks of 5, waiting for the gate to open. Suddenly, the sirens began to scream. An alert. We went back to the blocks. It was too late to evacuate us that evening. The evacuation was postponed to the next day. Hunger was tormenting us. We had not eaten for nearly 6 days except for a few stalks of grass and some potato peels found on the grounds of the kitchen. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the SS took positions all throughout camp and began to herd the last of us towards the apple plots. The resistance movement decided at that point to act. Armed men appeared everywhere, bursts of gunshots, grenades exploding. We, the children, remained flat on the floor of the block. The battle did not last long. Around noon, everything was calm again. The SS had fled, and the resistance had taken charge of the camp. At 6 o'clock that afternoon, the first American tank stood at the gates of Buchenwald. Our first act as free men was to throw ourselves onto the provisions. The provisions means the food. That was all that we thought about. No thought of revenge or of parents, only of bread. And even when we were no longer hungry, not one of us thought of revenge. The next day, a few of the young men ran into Weimar to bring back some potatoes and clothes, and to sleep with girls, but still no trace of revenge. 3 days after the liberation of Buchenwald, I became very ill, some form of poisoning. I was transferred to the hospital, and I spent 2 weeks between life and death. One day, when I was able to get up, I decided to look at myself in the mirror on the opposite wall. I had not seen myself since the ghetto. From the depths of the mirror, a corpse was contemplating me. The look in his eyes as he gazed at me has never left me. The end. What I'd like you guys to do now is I'd like you to go to those comprehension questions and get to work. I'm going to give you the rest of this week a little bit extra time to finish up and catch up on those comprehension questions and graphic organizers. And then on Monday, we are going to start writing our own memoirs. So I know I said it before, but just in case you didn't hear it or didn't remember, we're going to go fully to the Google Classroom next week. So please don't plan to do anything on packets any longer. All right. I hope you guys have a good rest of the day. When you are finished with your questions, please watch the vocab video to help you learn the last few new vocab words. See ya.